Hi, in today's video, we'll go over modes and ragas. Mode in Western music is it's a type of scale that is characterized by unique set of intervals. Intervals is the space between two notes. And in Indian music, we actually refer to them as ragas. Of course, in Indian music, it's a little more nuanced than just the notes and the intervals themselves, because we have moods and the way we approach a particular raga is different from a mode. But for practical purposes, we're going to talk about the notes in a mode and the notes in a raga and what it maps onto. So let's start with um, the first lesson, and which is what is a mode really. So let's go to ragamonsters.com, which is a site that I have for my students, which has a bunch of really useful resources I've gathered over time. Scroll down and you'll see there's something called modes and ragas. We're going to click on that. So as you can see, there are 7 modes. And as you can see, it's a lot of fun, and what's music without having a fun element in it, right? So 7 modes, and they are Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. And if it's too difficult to remember, don't worry about it. You can always find your own way of remembering it. And I usually, remember it like this, saying it does sound like monkeys and lions, which is IDPL, MAL, Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. So let's take a look as to what they really are and how they map. So we're going to go to Chrome Music Lab, which is a good, fun virtual piano. And assuming that you all know, you have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, which are all the white keys of an octave. And then we're going to write one more octave down, and I'll tell you why in a second. Okay. All right, great. So now let's look at the first mode. So the first mode actually goes from C to C. Okay. The second mode is D to D in terms of fixed intervals. E to E is the third, F to F is the fourth, G to G is the fifth, A to A is the sixth, and B to B is the seventh. Okay. So let's look at the first mode, which is C to C, which goes like. So that is what they call as the Ionian mode, and which maps onto a ragam called Shankarabharanam in South Indian classical music, which is Carnatic music. So the intervals are the same. Of course, in the ragam, it's a little more nuanced, but for practical purposes, that's the ragam. So that's Ionian. The second mode is Dorian, which is D to D. But before we go into that, the Ionian mode is one of the most popular modes. It's a major scale, and you'll hear a bunch of songs, a lot of pop songs in the Ionian mode. The next mode is the Dorian, which is D to D, which is if you take the intervals and play it like, it sounds like this. And that's got a bit of a folkish, it's one of my favorites actually. It's got a folkish tone to it. So Battle of Evermore, that's all Dorian. So this is Dorian, and that maps onto something called Kara Priya. And I actually put a bunch of songs out here in this mode, and I'll share it with you. So that's Dorian. Great. I hope you're doing okay so far. The third mode is the Phrygian mode, which maps onto Hanuma Todi. So Phrygian goes from E to E, and it sounds like. Okay, and so that is the Phrygian, and that's what is mapped onto Hanuma Todi. So that's Hanuma Todi. Okay, so and this again is the visual representation of the key of C. But here we're going to go from E to E. So I hope you understand that. And then you have F to F, which is beautiful, which is the Lydian mode. Okay, so Lydian is right here, and that maps onto a ragam called Kalyani. Kalyani in South Indian classical music, Yaman in North Indian classical music. Very pleasing rag. And it's the same as the Ionian, except that the fourth is raised. If you look at it here, you can tell that the fourth is raised. Then comes the Mixolydian, which again is a very common mode that's used. So that goes from G to G. So G to G is. Okay, so that's the Mixolydian, and that maps onto Hari Kamboji. Okay, Hari Kamboji. The next one is A to A, one of the most common after the major scale, the Ionian mode, which is the Aeolian. So this is Aeolian, which maps onto a ragam called Nata Bhairavi. So okay, so that's Nata Bhairavi. And then back to, and then almost back. So next is the Locrian mode, which goes from B to B. Okay, so that doesn't really have a ragam per se. So we're just going to leave it as that. And then we're back to the Ionian mode right after that. Okay, so that's just like a high level overview of what a mode is and how, a ragam, the intervals are similar in a ragam. And then in future videos, we can talk about different songs in each mode. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and spread the word. Love to hear from you. Bye.